You know when to introduce him.
Okay. Oh, where's the intro?
There's no intro slides.
Oh. Hold on, folks. We have a small technical difficulty. Like, I don't know where your bio went.
Okay.
Okay, tonight's presentation is Race to the Water Gap. It's being presented by Mike Helbing. Mike's a lifelong hiker and history fanatic. Um, his roots go back on the old Lackawanna Main Line with both personal family connections and experience that led to his interest in this. His grandfather started him hiking at age 3. He was a land surveyor and sort of imbued Mike with the history of the area. Um, he founded Metro Trails informally 29 years ago, and it's been a registered nonprofit since 2010. So, without any further ado, Mike Helbing and Race to the Water Gap.
One second. All right.
Thank you, everybody, for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope that you enjoy what I have to show you here today. I've been fascinated by then and now photo compilations ever since I was very young. It was the local paper, the Express Times, had articles by James Wright, a historian. Plus, there would be That Was Then, This Is Now photos. And so I always loved them, clipped them out every weekend. And at this point, I've actually created more of them than I ever read before in the past. I've got over 5,000 of these published on the Metro Trails Facebook page, and I have more than 1,500 of them still coming up. So if you follow the Metro Trails Facebook page, it'll be posting more of them every day, daily between 9 and 11 a.m. It's always programmed a month in advance. So the Race to the Water Gap is referring to the what became the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad. John I. Blair began to develop the Warren Railroad. It became that main line, and it was completed in 1856. The This was the line that was the first one to cross Warren County. We don't think of it as the Lackawanna Main Line coming down to Hampton, New Jersey, where this photo is taken. But this was the original main line because there was no Morrison Essex division that crossed over Warren County yet. The original main line started in Hampton from a junction with the Central Railroad in New Jersey, very near to this spot on Lackawanna Avenue. Now, this is a more modern photo. If I can get it to go back so you can see what it looks like now. It's not give me a second here. Usually I hit backspace and it goes.
Try now.
There we go. So make sure I can go forward and back. I like to do a little bit of this sometimes, but that's the same scene. Um, Lackawanna Avenue culvert there, the underpass that carried the road was it was the last of the stone structures built to carry a road under that line. It was left out because after William Truesdale took over as a president of the Lackawanna Railroad after 1900, he mostly replaced all of the other structures with concrete, heading from Washington up to into Pennsylvania. But this one here became a secondary line years later. So the original stone structure remained in place and it wasn't demolished until the early 2000s, unfortunately. So there's a little bit of remnant you can find everywhere. There's this thing here. People thought it was a tipple in the past. They've always asked what exactly is this? Located on Route 31 where the line crossed over. This was actually the bridge built over what was originally Route 30 when it was constructed. Then it was Route 69, but everybody was stealing the signs, and then they changed it to Route 31. But this is one of the early state highway projects. They had to change it from Route 30 because they had two highways named 30. There was one in South Jersey, so this one was changed. But here is the same scene with a photo by Alvin Smith. Mr. Smith has a whole lot of stuff from Hampton to Washington and even further north towards the town of Delaware. He has a recent book out that, or not he has, but a book was recently published showing a lot of his photography along the line. So this shows actually the demolition of the bridge that carried it over Route 31 from 1959. So there's another scene from that. And that same scene is seen right here. This one is taken by William B. Barry Jr., and it's from the Steamtown Archives. They have a huge collection of glass plate negatives that are very high quality. I always try to include all of the names of the photographers and the collection they belong to in any of the posts I have, but there's sometimes we just don't know. And the sad thing in this modern day is people just copy and repost things without any uh, added information to it. So I always tell everyone, if you happen to know who the photographer is, if it's not noted, please feel free to let me know, because as a community, we are helping to recognize the photographers and the collections and the great groups that might own them, like the one I'm presenting for tonight. So I'm always appreciative of the community coming in and adding more information, because we all help each other out in that way. So this one shows the construction of that structure. Go back to the next one. Again, the remaining abutment that's in place on present day Route 31. And what that looks like now. Go back and forth a little bit here. You can see that under the concrete that was on a lot of these bridges, two similar bridges are standing in Washington. It is a deck girder bridge under that. So as we get into Hampton, you can see another track over here. This was the location of the Hampton and the Hampton Junction. The town of Hampton, as we know it today, was originally just given the generic name of Junction. The Central Railroad of New Jersey, which is the track you see in the foreground, arrived here about 1853. The Warren Railroad created its junction there in 1856, and the name Junction, as just the generic name, lasted for a little while, but in 1856, there weren't so many railroads around. A generic name like Junction wasn't going to cut it for very long, so they had to come up with something else. The next town up from Junction was a colonial village called New Hampton, still there. That one was named for Hamptonshire, England. So they said, we'll just call it Hampton Junction. Flash forward to about 1959, they cut off the junction and they didn't need the name Junction anymore, so it became Hampton. So that's why the town of Hampton is actually much newer than New Hampton. There's not very much left of the old station site today, but there is a little box you could barely see off the left-hand side there. I like to refer to these as anchor points to the past that help me to decide where exactly I need to be to take a picture that matches it. Here we are looking at the Lackawanna Avenue again in Hampton, where the aforementioned underpass was. That was there when I started leading my hikes, and I have a picture taken in 1997 right here before it had been demolished. So unfortunately, there's not much left of it at all anymore. Going a little bit further ahead, we get over by Changewater. The line made its way up toward Washington. And this is one of those spots that I don't know exactly what we're looking at here, but supposedly this is a burial mound. This little corner is actually state parkland now because they've purchased much of the Lackawanna right-of-way. This was called Murderer's Bridge, the famous Changewater murders, which is also considered to be a cold case because the two men that were tried, Carter and Park, they were tried twice at the same time, illegal double jeopardy. And it was customary to bury murderers at crossroads rather than at regular cemeteries. So you have the road in the foreground used to be a straight across cut to the one you see in the background there. In 1856, when the railroad came in, they had to shift it to a right and a left to make their way through. And some people tell me this is where the graves are, and some people say they're not. This old newspaper article does refer to that as a burial mound with this guy standing on it, and that's the original through Pony Truss Bridge that carried the road, Asbury Anderson Road, over the Lackawanna. So when you have a truss bridge that's a short top that doesn't connect over the top, that's referred to as a pony truss, and they're fast disappearing from the area. This is another scene from the same place, which is known as Murderer's Bridge. And then what it looked like in this newspaper article right before it was ready to be demolished. Now we move back over down the road from there a little bit. They're out of sequence just slightly, but this is Changewater, and we're looking at the northern or westbound abutment of the original main line here of the Changewater Bridge, which was a deck truss structure. What's interesting about this abutment here is it has a kiln sort of built into it, and we've speculated what exactly that was. None of us are really sure. My theory was that they might have been firing the mortar for these enormous stone piers and abutments right on site, but we really don't know exactly what it was. The original bridge here was made of wood. Fred Halick sent me some really fantastic paperwork on how much wood was used to construct the original bridge. Then it had been replaced by the deck truss iron structure. So compared on this one, on the Musconetcong River Bridge, is a photo that my friend Maria provided to me. This was part of the Lebanon Township Historical Society. You could see the deck truss structure there, and the building that you're seeing to the right was associated with the Asbury Graphite Mill. It was a satellite facility to that, and huge mill complex that was there, and some of it was still standing when I was little. My dad used to like to go in there and play with the graphite when he was little, having grown up the road from that spot. So kind of a neat thing. The bridge that the ladies here are standing on is scheduled to be rehabilitated, but it will be saved. It's a stone arch built in 1800. Here you get a better view of that stone arch. The upstream side of it still has the original stone facade, and I think it was in the 70s that the downstream side was widened from a 1-lane to a 2-lane, which is barely a 2-lane. That's the side that's going to be rehabilitated. So this is a really good view of the stone piers here. And then we can compare it to this Washington Star article here, which likely dates back to the 40s, showing the same bridge and its original width. And you can also see the old graphite mill off to the right. This one here, taken a little further back, you get a view of the miller's house on the left-hand side. There was a photo in a Lebanon Township calendar from about 1987, this one, that showed that same miller's house. And again, if I go ahead a little bit, you can see the comparison of that building. That would show a really good scene of the old graphite mill there. It's an interesting thing about this particular bridge. It was all double tracked, including what later became the Hampton branch. But this bridge, they never double tracked this bridge. It's in Lowenthal and Greenberg's Lackawanna Railroad in northwest New Jersey that there was a plan when William Truesdale took over to replace this bridge with a similar viaduct to the 4 other popular ones we know of at Haynesburg, the Slateford, Martins Creek, and Tunkhannock. But it never came to pass because the Hampton was then just a secondary, the Hampton branch. So it remained the same single track route. And here we have the same scene, but it's or as close as I could get to it because of vegetation. First day of fishing in 1942, and they had better parking along the river back in 1942 than you have today. There's the scene what it looks like now. There is a fish and wildlife parking lot over there. The Hunterdon County side of this bridge site is owned by the State Department of Fish and Wildlife, and it's part of Musconetcong Wildlife Management Area. The Warren County side of it is owned by State Park Service, but there's none of it has been formalized as trail. It has been discussed that there should be a historic interpretive sign on site that has a greater deal of information on it. Right now, there is only a blue sign on the Hunterdon County side that denotes the significance of this particular bridge. And there's that one. So let's go back and forth a little bit. I try to get these things lined up as best I can. In this case, it was another one where I was close, but there's too much vegetation to really get anything worth showing. So that's why it's a little bit off. There's an old grist mill here, which is supposedly why the settlement was called Changewater here, because of the mill races is supposedly why it was so named. Here you have a scene where you can see the concrete facade on the downstream side of the Musconetcong Bridge. And good scene with the bridge piers. Of course, it's only good in the winter. But this is a pretty incredible one right here. I believe I got this photo from Henry Jewell. And we'll go up here again and just have a look at the difference between those. It's pretty amazing. And then stepping back a little bit, this is over here on River Road, looking in towards Changewater. And what that used to look like. Once again, you could see the grist mill off to the right and the old graphite mill to the left. And this is yet another scene, wintry one. I try to take these things usually when I'm walking through. So people will sometimes come on and say, why don't you go back and get a better picture? Well, because I have a full-time job and I don't have the time to get it. So this is all just sort of incidentally taken things while I'm walking. Now, this is an interesting one too. You'll notice that the pier off to the right is concrete. Everything else is stone. Well, that's because that was a replacement. The easternmost span of this bridge was replaced with a deck girder structure, but it was originally stone arches at that location. And I don't believe I have the one with the stone arches there, unfortunately, but there is a picture of it. The stone arches were demolished, and most of the stone from it is now laying on the embankment below that one abutment. Jumping ahead a little bit here, we're looking at the Washington Yard. So we can go into a little bit more detail here. The Lackawanna Main Line, the Warren Railroad came through Washington in 1856. At that time, there was only a north-south line through there. The Morris and Essex was a competitor to them. And when we say the race to the water gap, that's actually the name of one of the earlier chapters in Lowenthal and Greenberg's excellent book on this line. The race to the water gap was the two lines that were trying to build through the water gap. The Morris and Essex went so far as to survey the route from Hackettstown. They had already extended to Hackettstown. They surveyed it, but Blair got his plan approved first, and so the Warren Railroad made its way up to cross over the Delaware in the little village of Delaware. The Morris and Essex didn't want to give up there either, and as the book describes, the Morris and Essex ended up purchasing land on the New Jersey side of it, which is why Blair had to bring in his surveyors and change his plans and have that bridge cross over in the town of Delaware instead of up at the Delaware Water Gap. So it's very interesting stories of how exactly they've gotten these alignments, and it has a lot to do with just the back and forth and the competition between these lines. So you're looking right here at the Morris and Essex, but where I was standing when I took this photo was the original grade of the Morris and Essex. When they couldn't go through the Delaware Water Gap, this is another Alvin Smith photo, and we'll go back to this one. You can see the stone wall on the bottom left. So when they couldn't go through the Delaware Water Gap, they decided instead they were going to extend westward and connect with the Jersey Central in Phillipsburg, New Jersey. It was completed through to Phillipsburg in 1866. But at that time, they were still rivals. The Lackawanna would not let the Morris and Essex cross their line at grade. So the area where I took this photo is up on the original grade. If you were to go down along Railroad Avenue in Washington and you cross over the tracks, just beyond it, you'll see that there are fills on either side. That was built up because the original grade had to go over the road. And before Railroad Avenue was there, there's bridge abutments just to the west of Railroad Avenue that would be the original road route that went through. So after a little bit, the Morris and Essex kind of gave it up, and they were leased by the Lackawanna, I believe, 1868, and then it became the Morris and Essex division of the Lackawanna. From there, the Lackawanna no longer needed to use their connection to the CNJ as its main through route. They had a new main line that took them from right there in Washington heading eastbound to Hoboken. So when you refer to the old main line, I always kind of think of that as the Morris and Essex. I refer to the old main or the old road, as a lot of the old timers have called it, as the original Warren Railroad. And I think of this other one as the Morrison Essex, where this train is located in this picture. I was very lucky. I got permission from this is right before they switched over. Norfolk Southern had these rail yards in Washington, and then it shifted over to the a subsidiary of Black River and Western, and it was either Christmas Day or right before or after it. A guy let me in to do some compilation shots using some historic photos here. And it's pretty interesting the grade differences that were there. Just showed him what I was trying to do, and I was able to have a look at it. Now the station that you see in that photo was torn down in 1982. It's now gone. They laid more track there, and they actually dug up the old foundation of that station. Whenever I look at this, I like to remind people of something very important when it comes to our historic structures. And there you can see the old station being torn up. And there's the scene here. This would be another one of them that I think it's Rick Glosser would be the photographer on this one. But the thing I like to bring up about the station at this point is the National Register of Historic Places. People tend to get complacent when they hear that a building is on the National Historic Register because they're under the false impression that that building is somehow protected. It is not. If a building is on the National Register of Historic Places, it means only two things. One, it's an acknowledgement that it's old. And two, that it is eligible for grant money. It provides no protection whatsoever. So when this station was demolished in 1982, it was the only building in Washington, New Jersey on the National Register of Historic Places. So don't ever get complacent if you hear something's on the National Register. It takes grassroots efforts. It takes passionate people to step up. You might have to create a nonprofit. You might have to do whatever it takes in order to be eligible for receiving grants, and talk to your local politicians, let them know what's important to you. We continue to lose historic structures to this day. Last year, we lost the 1862 freight station in High Bridge, New Jersey. Was completely demolished in 15 minutes on a Sunday. That was the second oldest railroad station in Hunterdon County. And this continues to happen. I haven't been able to confirm it yet, but I understand the Port Murray station on the Morrison Essex line is in danger of destruction now for a new development that's going to go in on that property behind the post office. So this is something that we need to be vigilant about, even if it's on the National Register. Still in Washington, we see some blocks here that used to be some of the yard infrastructure. And another Alvin Smith photo of those exact items there. So I grew up in Port Colden, less than a mile from this location. So this was my playground all the time. And back then, we were always down on the tracks. It was just all the kids in town were down on the tracks all the time. It's a lot different now than it was even 20 years ago, where they didn't mind. The engineers would let you up in the cab on some of the things, and it's a lot different world now than it was. But here we're up on the grade of the Morrison Essex, the original grade. Once again, some of this is a community park from the other side. There's just no good parking for it. Looking at the rail yard and where the station used to be in the middle, and here's an old postcard image of the same. Over here to the right side, you can see it's actually Washington written on the landscaping over there to the right. The house you see to the left is called the Washington House. It was a hotel, which is conveniently located across from the station. And it was the second building to hold that name. This is one from one of my hikes 20-something years ago. And then that same scene. This was in Lowenthal and Greenberg's book. So the Washington House is seen in that one over there as well. Washington House was the first Washington House built in 1811. It was why Washington was given its name. It was originally called Downtown Mansfield, named for the ancestral homeland of the Bowlby family. But that was changed to Washington because of the Washington House, which was on the corner of the Spruce Run Turnpike and the Easton Morristown Turnpike. And since it was the stopping point, I always tell people that Washington isn't named for George Washington. It's named for a bar that's named for George Washington. So a little bit of trivia there too. So that was the second of the three Washington houses. The first Washington house in the middle of the town burned down in 1869. The that second one is still standing today, and it's a private residence. This one's an early Lackawanna one here. This is early 1900s. I believe this one's a Watson Bunnell photo. Watson Bunnell and William B. Barry Jr., two photographers that did all the glass plate negatives for the Lackawanna Railroad. They did so well in the early 1900s that they could keep a full-time photographer on duty. And if you follow my friend Chuck Walsh and what he does on the Lackawanna Cutoff Historic Committee page, he posts the glass plate negatives all the time. Fantastic stuff with great dissertations and good community involvement trying to ascertain where a lot of these things are. So now we're looking out at the yard from the original Morris and Essex grade again. And here we have a very early scene. We'll talk about this one a little bit more. This would be when the Morris and Essex had just come through. So we're looking at 1800s. The shape of this means it was probably a stereoscopic photo. And you can see the original turntable over here on the left. The later station, the brick station that we had in the other photos, was built right on about the spot of that turntable. The second turntable would have been off this frame, off to the right. The pit was still in place until they built some townhouses in that area more recently. But there were three stations to serve Washington. The first one was not this one, and it wasn't the brick one. It was actually located at Port Washington on the Morris Canal. Remember, we didn't have the Morris and Essex yet. The most important interchange in Washington then was, of course, where it connected with the Morris Canal. And there's a little bit more of that yard again. And once again, what you see when the station was there. Back and forth a little bit. Beautiful station. I used to have the bottom brick of the ticket window of that station, but unfortunately my house in Port Colden burned down and I lost all sorts of stuff. So this is the crossing of Railroad Avenue today in Washington. And this was a connection. And here you see in the foreground, this one was built to go over to the what was at this point the Hampton branch. You got an F unit there coming up. So a likely early 50s scene here. Another one looking at the yard. And a postcard image, once again, with the station. I've got quite a few of these. This is when I think they were just getting ready to rip up the station foundation. And once again, another glass plate negative. Here is the Washington House, the hotel building across the street from the station. The road you can see behind it was the original through road before Railroad Avenue was there. If you were to follow that road, it will take you up to the tracks, but then the abutments to where it originally passed under the Morris and Essex line can be found over there. And there's a postcard image of the second Washington House. Now we're looking down the road a little bit from there. This is Washburn Avenue in Washington. This is where the Hampton branch was crossed by the road. And we have a similar newspaper article. And I've got it goofed up here. Where'd it go? Sorry. Well, that one disappeared. This is the right of way in Washington, just a little further from the yard. The Lackawanna Old Main Line heading beyond where the Warren Lumber area is now state park land, but it's informally used as a trail. It's wet. It's not all that pleasant to go through. Hopefully we can get that open. I would love to see this as a connection between the police station, which is just off the frame to the left, and the Warren Hills High School to the police station to the right, Warren Hills High School to the left. And then what that looked like, this is on hike number 1 when I first started bringing my group through in 1997. This is also looking at Washington, the circle at 31 and 57 from the bridge, and then a postcard image of that. Here we are at the Washington yard limit over here. This is the Route 57 underpass. And you have what was like a textile mill on the right, and also the Needham organ factory was in this area. So then we get to an early shot of that. The one building burned down in I think it was the 60s, but the other one is now apartments. Now this is a significant one here too. It's just a house. What's that doing in there? Well, this is a pretty interesting one. Look at the blocks on the corners of it. This was the mayor of Washington's house back in the day, located on the boulevard, directly across from where the original Easton Morristown Turnpike used to go under the Lackawanna line. The significance of this house is it is built from the stones of the original underpass for the Lackawanna. Go back here. And there is what it looked like soon after it was built, around like 1907. They replaced that culvert, which was a single lane, with a 2-lane concrete arch that's still there today. It was a big problem back in the day because in 1906, the Easton Washington Traction Company opened up its trolley line, which ended up until the 1920s in use there. So you couldn't have a single lane with a trolley going around with 2 blind curves. So it really had to be replaced. But they didn't waste anything back in the day, and you end up getting this house out of the Lackawanna culvert. Here we're looking at the yard right before. Now you could not even get this shot because the Black River and Western, since they took over, always have cars parked up here. But there's what it looked like when it was the double track line soon after the culvert had been built to carry Route 57. Had a tower on top of it, and the foundation for that's still there. Another similar scene there. And these are William B. Barry Jr. Photographs showing the original one. So here's the underpass as it exists today. Have a look at the stones on the far left side of this photo. That wall is still there, but that is also partially rebuilt from the that original bridge, which went at an angle, as I had stated. Once again, the same underpass, and right after it was new. Now, when you see the postcard images like this one, obviously they didn't have color photos back then, but they would take a good quality photo and they would send it to Germany, where they would have very talented painters come in and they would colorize it by painting the actual photograph. So you do have a historic interpretation of what was there, but you also have something that maybe isn't exactly as it looked. In a lot of cases with these historic photos, they would take artistic license and paint pedestrians into it, paint vehicles into it, and you'll sometimes see kinds of trains in these things that they had painted on there, or makes of other vehicles that were not even available in the United States. Sometimes they're also very out of scale because they don't have a frame of reference for it. This one is also included both in Washington, New Jersey's 1968 Centennial Book, as well as Lowenthal and Greenberg's Lackawanna Railroad in Northwest New Jersey, showing the Eastern Washington Traction Company. The traction company went as far as Port Murray, but they couldn't get willing landowners to extend that any further. Here we are with the construction of that bridge. Once again, it does have a deck girder structure there over it. Actually, that's a through girder. Another postcard image of the same, and after the trolley line had come through. Once again, the original culvert that was rebuilt into a house. Warren County Drugstore advert on there. And you can see the trolley track goes through it right there. This is a really good one for showing the how the trolley had to go around this crazy curve, and I don't know how many fatalities they had, but there must have been some kind of liability issues. Now we're looking at Route 31. This is from the parking lot of DeCola's Pizza, which in my opinion is the best pizza in New Jersey. Highly recommend it. Also the best cheesesteaks. And then right after that had been constructed. For a while, Route 31 ended at this location because they hadn't completed it yet. So there's a modern view of it. And there's what it looked like for some time before they actually started the construction of it. This is one of them here that I took just a few years ago. I start to feel old when I'm actually using my own photos for my then and now compilations. But this same scene is that, and that's my old friend Rich about 20 some odd years ago. The uh, the scene looks nothing like this anymore. But anyway, the middle line here is the Lackawanna main line. There's still a couple of rails in place there to this day. You just can't find them because they're so into the weeds. The one to the left is a spur into what used to be Warren Lumber, and the spur to the right goes to American Can. Um, for a long time, this was kept open, and it was like an ATV trail, but it's quite a lot different today. And it becomes state parkland right after that. Now, this is looking through to where the Morris Canal used to pass underneath. Once again, the Morris Canal, that's not catching up there.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a latency.
Well, we'll give it a minute. So Port Washington was the original important spot in Washington, and the canal offices and the railroad offices were side by side. And now you can see it. So is what we're seeing up there real time?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is where the Morris Canal used to pass beneath the Lackawanna. And there is a picture of the through girder bridge that carried the canal beneath. I have a couple more of this as well. I couldn't really get much better even in the winter with this growing in so much. But here's a William B. Barry Jr. one coming up in just a moment that is looking toward that, and you can actually see when it comes up the where the spurs went. There was also a coaling trestle out in this area. It's still not coming up. There we go. And you can see in the distance there the double tracks going over the through girder bridge across the canal. Now, what this looks like today, this is right about where the canal crossed. There are still abutments there. Let's go back a little bit for a second if I can show you exactly what I mean. So there's still the abutments to this bridge right there, if you were to take a walk back up in there. And where the switch is to present day, well, it's not American Can anymore, but you can see in this picture, though, both to the right above the switch and to the left protruding, you can see the abutments to the bridge that carried it over the Morris Canal. And that exact scene, the way it looked back in the early 1900s. Now, the Morris Canal was a very significant thing. It was completed from Phillipsburg, New Jersey to Newark first in the 1830s, and by 1842 it was extended to Jersey City. So it traveled 102 miles, and it was the greatest climber of the world's canals because of its use of 23 Scotch turbine-driven inclined planes. So overcoming the highlands of northern New Jersey, it went up these short portage railroads, which we have 11 of those sites in Warren County alone, and very significant thing. So it was a good connection to have initially, but after all the railroads came through, the Morris and Essex just duplicated its route basically. So it got to be a lot less important. So the Morris Canal was finally abandoned in 1924, much dismantled by 1927. Here we're also over at Port Washington, once again looking at the former canal crossing site. And when it comes up, I have the William Barry photo here showing the same scene. Now we move through towards leaving Washington, heading towards Oxford. This one was an interesting one to try to figure out. Someone sent me this photo, which I'm not exactly sure who took this one, but I think there was a Charlie Hauser photo, very similar from around the time. There's a few different people that were taking photos of the exact same kinds of Erie Lackawanna trains. at this exact location. So I'm not sure exactly who took this one, but whenever somebody knows, I appreciate being told because I will go back and add it to the description. So go forward again here. You can see the difference. So this is taken from a farm overpass, and it's on state park land, but it's not signed as such here. This is between Washington and Oxford. Of course, they wanted to have some grade separated crossings, and the farm overpass is an interesting one because if you're looking at it from below, it's got stone abutments that are only so high, but after locomotives got larger, they had to raise it. So the stone abutments are capped with concrete, and the bridge is still intact. Um, so that's what this was taken from, right on that bridge, probably in the late 60s here. Now, this is also Washington. This is looking at the former crossing of Jackson Valley Road in Washington. I walked across that bridge when I was about 5 years old with my grandfather, and it was torn down soon after. And here's what that one looked like. Now that's also Jackson Valley Road. Most of these are included. They're all on the Metro Trails page. So you look it up. I've got long dissertations tied to each one of these. This is the Oxford Tunnel, officially called the Van Ness Gap Tunnel. In the early 1900s, it was faced with concrete over here, but this was completed in 1862. That previous picture taken from the top of the farm overpass was about where the temporary track from 1856 until 1862, a temporary right of way went out and around County House Mountain and West Oxford Mountain, then up through Van Ness Gap, back over to the later or currently known main line on the north side of Oxford. So that was used only from 1856 to 1862. It was called the switch track, but it had no switchbacks on it. It was just a circuitous route, and it was by no means poorly done. They actually did a pretty good job on grading all of that. Very obscure to find anything left of it. I went out with my old friend Bob Bodenstein about 20 years ago, and we actually located some sections of that right of way in islands of trees, and it's very cool. So the tunnel here, I've gone through it tons of times, and here's the same photo by Neil Shankweiler from the Anthracite Railroads Historical Society. The tunnel's about a half mile long, and it's always been an amazing one, full of water. But the problem was it first collapsed in 2004, then it collapsed again in 2007 or no 2017, and I haven't gone through it ever since. The last time I managed to get through it had so much earth coming down in the thing that it figured they were getting too close to the surface. Now this goes directly under Route 31. You can even see if you look real close above the tunnel and slightly to the right, you can see the speed limit sign even in this photo. So a reasonable distance of it goes under 31 here or is within the right of way of the highway. If that were to collapse, it's not going to necessarily collapse straight down. It could even be off the side of it, and it would be a major problem. So I've been trying to get them to address this for a long time. Now, if you were to go inside the mouth of the tunnel here, which it's fenced off finally, but if you were to go in just a little ways, a piece of railroad rail has been bent or had been bent and put in place to shore up the roof. That railroad rail has now fallen to the floor of the tunnel, and it's directly beneath Route 31. Nobody wants to address it, though. I consider this to be one of the biggest liabilities in the state of New Jersey, but at the same time, it's also a major historic site. So on one hand, I'd love to see it saved, but on the other hand, something has to happen here. Um, it seems like Pennsylvania and New York do pretty well with all of their tunnels, addressing them and getting them open for pedestrians, but uh, somehow we're pretty far behind in New Jersey on that end. I really hope something happens with this before somebody gets hurt. If somebody were to try to go through the tunnel now, on the other side of it, you could stand up in front of the mouth of the tunnel, and your head will hit the ceiling. It's been silted in so bad. So if somebody does try to get through and makes their way to the other side, you actually can't get through the fence. So there's just so many different liability issues with it. We can get this next one to go. Um, there was a house which we believe was a tunnel keeper's house located on the side where Route 31 is now. Just above it, there's also Tunnel Hill Road. If you drive up Tunnel Hill Road from Route 31, you'll notice all of a sudden a section of it gets very flat. That is because Tunnel Hill Road is built on top of the original 1856 right of way. Tunnel Hill Road, as well as a little piece of something called Jost Drive, which is a private driveway, are both built on top of that original right of way. Route 31 has obliterated much of the original right of way where it came around the corner. And if the thing will come up, the next photo is the same scene we have on the screen there. There we go. And that's before the early 1900s refacing of the east portal of the Oxford Tunnel. Here we are looking at the same portal. I've included this one because it's on hike number 1 with my group back in 1997. This is the west portal of the tunnel. What was really interesting about this is the fact that those wooden posts there were what held the doors on the tunnel. This tunnel once had doors on it, and the fact that that wood is still in place is pretty amazing. There was also a marble plaque directly over the portal seen here. It was stolen by somebody with like a crane on the back of a truck. Fortunately, the great local newspaper reporter Richard Harpster was on a walk down to the tunnel that day, and he had seen this was in the 1980s. He saw that there was another guy out there that had a camera and was taking some photos. So when he saw the thing was missing and that these guys had left with it, he asked the photographer down there, "Did you happen to get any pictures with these guys taking that out?" And so he says, "Yeah, I think so." Well, they got his license plate number. So Harbster didn't go to the police or anything. He took matters into his own hands. He found out where the guy lived, a young guy, in the eastern part of the state. He went to his house and he says, "We won't press charges, but you're going to take that plaque and you're going to donate it to the Warren County Historical Society." And he did, and the plaque was returned, and it has been built into the rear wall of the Shippen Manor in Oxford, which happens to be the original 1856 right of way. So if it's going to be put somewhere, at least it's somewhere appropriate for the line. Believe it or not, there were once 2 tracks side by side through this tunnel. It started out as a single track, then it went to a switch single track. Then it was a double track when the trains were still small enough. And then for a little bit of time, it used what was called the gauntlet track, back to a switch single, and then back to a single again before it was abandoned just before 1970. And here we have an image. I think this might be one of Harbster's before the plaque was removed from it. My first time ever walking through it, the plaque was still up in there. My grandfather took me through it for the first time when I was 5 or 6. Now, inside it, you might find a couple of these barrels. Now, the water goes over your knees. It's also the coldest water I've ever been in. But back when I was in high school, the way we would get through was on the raft. And that's all that's left of the raft as of the last time I went through in like 2017. But that was taken on my second hike through in 1997. And then I got this one on the last time I ever went through the tunnel, and that's my little nephew Jacob there, who's now 17 or something. Time flies. And he was only 7 or 8 at the time. He says this is the first and last time for this. And there's back at the first time that we did it way back. Now we're going into Oxford. The original right-of-way prior to the tunnel was way off to the right here, but this is the site of the station in Oxford, which was the classic pagoda-style station. Not very many of these remain on the Lackawanna line. I believe there's still one up in Nicholson. It's like a pagoda style. Another one I've seen is called Hunlock Creek, although it's collapsing very badly and won't last much longer. But the pagoda style was very classic. The the Delaware Water Gap one had a smaller one at one time, but that station never had this. One that is standing is Portland, PA. Was originally a pagoda roof, but then it was extended upon and the roof was changed. So technically, that's another one. So it also in the 1990s, Lower Denmark Road was rerouted onto the railroad right of way. It used to come out behind Oxford Tire, but they moved it, and the concrete portion of the platform is still there, but the rest of it's a little different. Here we're looking at Lower Denmark Road on the right of way from above, and there's the pagoda style station, and then you have in the background is the rolling mill, and you can see Van Ness Gap out beyond that. All that infrastructure is, of course, gone today. Another scene with the station. This was always a fun one too. We do some hikes through here, and the people that used to live in the last house in there didn't like anybody walking on the dead end road, even though it was to state land. And on one night, he chased us down and actually tried to run my group over. We literally had to jump off and over the guardrail to avoid being hit. But I'm told that guy died, so I don't have to worry about him anymore. We have some crazy experiences sometimes. More of Oxford. I've been told that the Oxford station's fate was met when they used it as a practice drill for the local fire department. Some of the abandoned houses in Peak West Wildlife Management Area were also used for that purpose. Now here you can kind of see, you get a good view of what was left of the rolling mill, 1900s view, but also you could see Lower Denmark Road there in the foreground before it was moved. You go on, I don't remember the guy's name on this one here, but this next one coming up, some of the kids that were in this picture have actually commented on the post, which is really cool. Once again, Lower Denmark Road, and then the station site. There's been an initiative to try to turn some more of this into into a public trail. The section from Lower Denmark Road ahead has been turned into a trail. It's the only section of the entire Lackawanna Old Main that has been turned into a trail. It's paved, but it was done illegally, even at that. This is looking at the grade crossing, the way it would have looked. It's kind of a weird one to pick out, but it's once again, it's Lower Denmark Road. And then we have a William Barry photo coming up of that same scene. I have a few of the Barry photos. Usually William Barry or Bunnell, they would be dispatched to a site if there was an accident, some grade crossing accident, which is why most of these exist. So you could see right there where the road was shifted over onto the railroad railroad bed. But it's great because you can kind of pick out. We probably had the tripod on one spot and just moved around very slightly. So the section of it just up here, it does become a trail. I threw this in here too, just because it's the story of the hike. We'd always stop at the Busy Bee in Oxford, which is still there, and that's our group on the first one. So the section of it that was turned into a trail was done because they had apparently a school bus issue or something in Oxford, and this is where the grade would have gone under the road. It would have looked like back in '97. But they paved it without going through the state's land management review process. This is where there was a house right along the right of way that we always used to go into. Now here we have, this is a really interesting spot. It's the site of two railroads crossing over the Peak West River at exactly the same location. You have the three-arch span of the Lackawanna above. The through girder bridge below is the Lehigh and Hudson River Railway, which was completed at this location in 1881. The earliest appearance on a map of this is its original charter as a proposed route, the Peak West and Wallkill Railroad. It materialized to several different railroads, but the Lehigh and Hudson River Railway came as a consolidation of a few different lines. Eventually traveled from Belvedere, New Jersey, to Maybrook, New York. It had trackage rights on the Beldell to the south, to Phillipsburg, and then had its own bridge over the Delaware down there. Made its way into the Lehigh Valley, and all the way to Maybrook. A lot of that is now under the management of the modern New York Susquehanna and Western. They wanted to take over more of it, but it is only active from just below Sparta Junction north. The section just below Sparta Junction on has been abandoned since 1986. There's a lot of this was never turned into a trail, but through this section, it is part of Peak West Wildlife Management Area. Several different land agencies have picked up sections of it. It was a lot of it was bought by the same guy that bought the cutoff. So it was an interesting scenario, but there is an effort being led by Warren County to try to connect all of the missing pieces of it to open it up to people. So the three-arch span here in Lowenthal and Greenberg's book, it tells us that this was a replacement for the original one, but that doesn't make any sense because this was a major line when it came through, and everywhere else that they've replaced a bridge, they built a new span parallel with it. Except here, there is no evidence of there ever having been one right next to it. But then we've also found photos of this bridge during the addition of concrete. So you can see two of the undersides of it were coated with concrete here. It's my firm belief at this time that it is the same original stone arch bridge over that location because we have now scenes showing the beginning of the concrete. It looks like it was raised, and that would have been done to accommodate an underpass at Route 46, just to the west of this location. So there was this is also looking at the Lehigh and Hudson. What's the guy's name that did this one? I think I wrote it on there. But you're looking from the Route 46 bridge, 31 bridge. I'm sorry. All right, put him in there. Dennis Esminger, that was it. Dennis Esminger took photos from this bridge in a couple of directions back before the Lehigh and Hudson had been removed. I remember when I was little being able to see pretty clearly walking across it, and quite a bit different now. So our the Warren County's Warren Highlands Trail plan, the section of the right of way from Oxford to Buttzville is going to fit into that plan, connecting it through. And this one here, this photo was it's a postcard image, but it was also included in Lowenthal and Greenberg's book as well, showing the original stonework. Here we are looking over at the corner of, it was previously Route 6, Route 31 was of course 30, then 69, etc. And here you can see a little bit of, in the background, the Lackawanna's three-arch stone bridge. And you get a little bit of the underpass there that carried 46 under the right-of-way, as well as the Route 31 bridge here to the left with the Lehigh and Hudson. This one here, this is kind of hard to figure out, and it doesn't really show you a whole lot. But I did manage to get from the same point. You can see the original crossing over here on your left. That would have been where Route 46 is today. And this was another one by by William Barry. And similarly, a lot of the right-of-way was chopped away here behind what was called Walt's Mini Mart. They just demolished that store below within the past month. We're working on trying to purchase the rest of this right-of-way. The property that had the little mini mart on it over there granted an easement to Warren County. This is actually a Watson Bunnell photo. His name is on it over there. Sometimes they put those on there and sometimes they don't. It's frustrating trying to figure out the dates of them otherwise. Here we're standing where the right of way would have gone right over the highway, and that's about the best you can get of it. Where I'd have to be up in a lift to do better with the Bunnell photo. Looking from 31 to 46 on the right hand side, right about where that that sign is on the slope is where Warren County has the easement now, and what that used to look like. And you could see the railroad grade right up there behind it. A lot of that section of the railroad bed was excavated away, and all the land behind that is now part of Peak West Wildlife Management Area. Here we're looking at 31 and 46 again. And once again, you can see the 3-arch span over there to the left. And we've always walked through these things. We'd stop at every one of these stores as we go along the way, and it's kind of interesting to see how much things change. So one of the things that you get from me that a lot of people don't have is I actually walked all this stuff, and I love and respect all the other rail fans that have actually seen all of these fallen flag lines running, and I wish I had the opportunity to see it, but I get to see it from a little bit of a different angle and appreciate as much of it as I can see. So there we have the other image of the bridge. I got this one from Henry Jewell also, showing a train crossing over 46. This would be the crossing of Green Pond Road. That was the original name of Mountain Lake in Buttzville, New Jersey. And then the old scene there. There's a couple of these also where the road goes down in a couple different locations. This is the next crossing over. There's a little side lane over there. There's a grade crossing on the railroad. And the house is still there. And at this point, the right of way goes on to some private land. Was the site of a cleanup straight ahead here over at Green Pond Road. So the right of way had been obliterated. It's also been totally dug up in that area. But there's what that looked like. Let's see if I can get it to go. It's moving a little faster now. Just like the other ones too, in the Steamtown archives, you have these really great photos of the crossings that are much easier to emulate. And they got them at all these different angles that are fantastic. You have a 3-truss bridge straight ahead there. You're actually looking down at a grade crossing straight ahead on the Lehigh and Hudson River Railway that was a very dangerous one. Eventually, that had to be cut off, and they changed it to where Buttzville Road, in order to continue through on it, you have to go on the Mill Street today. Most of the Lehigh and Hudson is also state land through there. From the point at the bottom of the hill, going right from the bridge, it's state parkland out behind Hot Dog Johnny's. And then one more scene of that crossing. It's also informally used as a trail all through here. By this point, whenever we'd be hiking it, people are getting kind of tired because we stop at Hot Dog Johnny's and they feel like they have a rock in their stomach and don't want to keep going on. This one's looking from below. So there was apparently a station stop in there. I've never seen a photo of the Buttzville station on the Lackawanna. The Lehigh and Hudson station was very well documented. It almost looks like it must have just been a flag stop here, but I'm really not sure exactly what that was. It's clearly got the sign though. I've never seen a photo of a structure on it. These ball courts on the left are built right over the right of way here, so it doesn't look like a whole lot of anything going through. People would never even realize there was a railroad there at that point. But the garage is still in the same location. And then I just included this because we've always stopped there on every hike. and the right of way was just up the hill from it. The original Hot Dog Johnny's was on the corner of 31 and 46th, and it moved over to this site. The Hot Dog Johnny was actually a mine worker out in Hibernia area, so then opened this up and it grew. Yep, that's the Lehigh and Hudson one there. So I've thrown a couple of those in there too, just because it was part of that original hike that I'd been doing. So now we're looking at Bridgeville crossing. Bridgeville is the location of the only remaining Lackawanna Old Main Line station on the entire New Jersey section. It doesn't look like much here, but the station was added on to and expanded. It did suffer a fire a couple of years ago, but part of this building behind is the original station. And I was impressed to find out it was actually a stone station. I got to go inside it, but there's the same scene from another postcard image, and that is it's still in use, although much altered. But that's the only remaining one in New Jersey on the main line. And this is over close to where the quarry is in Bridgeville. This just goes to show how the right of way has changed quite a lot over the years. This is over in a little settlement called Sarepta. It was probably once some kind of a flag stop there, but I don't really have anything on it. There was a quarry spur that served here. But what that looked like back in 1997, it was also a dumping spot. We'd always sit in these chairs until they removed them. And then we move on to the Manunka Chunk tunnels, which is most everybody's favorite spot on the right of way because it was two tunnels side by side. The original 1856, the other one, I believe, I want to say 1871, but I forget off the top of my head right now. The tunnels are owned by State Park Service under jurisdiction of Jenny Jump State Forest. The land around it is part of Beaver Brook Wildlife Management Area. Really, very little of Beaver Brook has anything to do with the wildlife management area. They just didn't know the name of the stream that ran through it when it was named. The name of the stream is actually Catherine's Run. And this is the one that was used from the Detroit Photographic Company of the for the event tonight. And I'll go back to get a good comparison here. The east portal of the tunnel used a natural facing, and it's a very beautiful spot. But I have to say, it doesn't look anything like this today. If you want to get to that spot, you better be ready to wade through water above your belt. The Route 46 collapsed with the water running through it during the flooding we had 2 years ago. Completely washed out into 46. I actually posted a YouTube video 1 week before saying that it was going to happen. And so remember that when with what I had to say with the Oxford Tunnel, stepping back a little bit. But amazing tunnel. It's about 1,000 feet long, and it's kind of a strange thing because it looks like they built through some of the wash of Catherine's Run in order to build this. And then the interesting thing with the stream was they used this interesting wooden flume system to carry the creek up and above the railroad right of way and then into an artificial canal that traveled a good distance downstream, and then it ushered the stream beneath the tracks after it got to a better graded area. But there's from some of the first hikes. I would do these things back then. I thought it was being funny holding the camera at an annoying angle. So I'm now using some of my original 1997 photos that I took at these weird angles just to emulate a little bit of it. Now, this interesting scene here is from a precarious perch on a rock. I happened to be walking the right of way through here when Henry Jewell texted me that he had just found this photo of the Manunka Chunk Tunnel. And I told him, I can't believe you sent me that right now. I have to climb up on this rock and try to get it. And it even featured a telltale in it. So I climbed up there and got the same shot. Now, Telltale is that thing with all the strings on it there. That was the use for overhead clearance there. Somebody's up on top of the train. You don't want to hit anything on there. You're not going to make it through the tunnel. Um, so this is toward the end of service on the line, probably late 60s. Not very much went through here after 1968. Um, they actually didn't even get around to removing the tracks, probably stayed up until Agnes in 72. But if you were to go through the portal that the train is coming through in this image, there are still rails in there um, between two of the major collapses. Both tunnel portals are passable, but they're not particularly safe. So I haven't gone through them either in about 2 years. So, but still a very cool image to see one of the later trains going through it. More of the wet right of way. And this one here, I included this because I compared this one here. You can see there's houses up there. This photo was taken right after a very serious washout that happened in 1913. Now, it must have been a very isolated one because we know the major floods hit the area where the Pumpkin flood in 1903, and then the next one was 1955. But this 1913 incident was major. If you were to go up on the hill, you can find foundations of some of these buildings. I've been trying to figure out what happened over here because there's a newer grading for the creek that bypassed the original stone laid flume system that was further up. I believe they must have changed that about 1913 and eliminated some of the homes above and had like this new flume. So if you go up and walk through, there's a couple of different places the creek has been ushered to over the years. It's a closer up view of the tunnels. And that one again. This is Catherine's Run, the stream that comes through. So we've always gone through walking on this. And you can see there's these boards in place here. Those boards were part of that original flume system. They're laying all over the place. So they've been propped up. And those were probably not used since 1913, but those boards are still lasting. And we still walk across them to this day. So another really annoying angled one, but I did that just to emulate my 1997 shot. I've done a few of those just because from hike one, I've redone every photo 20 years later. Or even some other ones where I'm sitting in the field. Yes, I actually hiked the whole thing in a Star Trek uniform. We've done it in all sorts of things. I think the funniest, though, was when I had the entire group wear ShopRite smocks. And everybody we saw on the way, we asked them which way to the orientation meeting. And like, ShopRite's 5 miles back in Washington. And I said, well, we're looking for the one in Stroudsburg. Well, that's 20 miles that way. I'd say, okay, guys, 20 miles. All wearing ShopRite smocks. So this is a washout right here that's it's gotten worse over the years. It doesn't look anything like this now because I took this just before the the one that was more recent. There were still rails down in there up until that last washout. Here we have Henry Wilhelm photo. Bob Bars. If you follow anything else on Facebook, you might know Bob does the Facebook group called just the Lackawanna, and it's full of all sorts of excellent stuff. So another one I definitely tell everybody to follow if you really like this line is that one. There's both Chuck Walsh and his Lackawanna Cutoff Historic Committee, and Bob Bars and his the Lackawanna group is also very excellent, full of all sorts of great information. And there is the west portal of the Manunka Chunk Tunnel. This has gotten way worse. The right side here has now collapsed from above, and you can see daylight right inside it. We did have the Manunka Chunk Tunnel included on the most endangered historic sites in the state of New Jersey. I really wish this could be saved, but it's it's getting worse all the time, and the state doesn't really have the funding for it. And here's what it looked like. Interesting thing, Manunka Chunk was a station site for much of its existence. But the station moved around a lot based on floods, based on expansion. Um, this is looking back from a little further where the stream flowing out would go out into these pipes that, of course, it's all washed out now, and what that had looked like. So this was always a really cool spot to get to. This is similar to the other one, but they actually narrowed the photo. Now here's another very old one, another one they would call a stereoscopic. This is from another very precarious perch. And you can see off to the right, the Belvidere Delaware Railroad had already been extended to this point, but they did not connect with the Lackawanna initially. That's because that used standard gauge. And as you can see here, the Lackawanna was still broad gauge. It was originally put at broad gauge to match the Erie. And you could see what would be the original station building there and platform in between. So it wasn't until several years later that the Belle would have the same gauge, and they'd built up a fill to have it connect with the Lackawanna formerly there. The Belle line started out in it was completed as far from Trenton to New Hope in 1851, then slowly by like 1853 it also reached Phillipsburg, and then eventually up to the Manunka junction here. So this is possibly the most frightening one I got of all of the comparisons. No, you know what? It didn't work, did it? Let's go. No, I don't have that one in there. I'll have to fix that. But I did have a now version of that. Sorry about that. And there's that same scene. Now this one is from a little bit further back. You can see the right of way out behind these buildings here. And this one had been mislabeled a couple times. The smoke there, at some point somebody said that it had been the building of the second tunnel, but I believe we identified that this is as another incident, a fire or something that occurred later. Another one of the tunnel. And this is back at the beginning of my hikes here. This is looking out of the mouth of the tunnel, standing right inside. And this is one of them given to me by Fred Halick, who has a great collection. Looking at the same scene today, he had a couple of really great ones that we used. He also provided this one to me. Once again, this is looking from right between the two portals. So that would be a really great early one. Fred had written a really fantastic book on the Blairstown Railroad for those that would like to check it out, which connected with the Lackawanna and then eventually went to Blairstown, purchased and expanded on by the New York Susquehanna and Western in 1881. This is looking at Catherine's Run up the slope from 46 below, and very similar to the flood that happened 2 years ago that washed it all out. There was a very similar one and taken from this same spot. Is this from the 1913 washout? As I stated before, up until this last washout, some of those rails were still down in that pit. You could climb in there and see them. It was really cool, but I have pictures of them somewhere too. Once again, looking at the mouth of the tunnels. And this is also the crazy perched tower at the washout. Once again, 1913 again. And that's the one that was from above I was looking at from before. I'll have to change that. But that would also be the same scene anyway. This one here is a Detroit Photographic Company one also. We'll go back to this again, and you can, if you train your eye on the portal to the tunnel there, you can kind of see how close we are on that. Much of the Belle was abandoned in that area, with the line to the right in these images. There was another washout in 1955, and they deemed it irreparable. So, so the first section of the Belle to be abandoned was that section from Belvidere to Manunka in 1955. The rest of it hung on until around 1984 and was also removed. This is looking down from above once again. You look over to the far right, you can see there's railroad ties hanging over the side there from previous washouts. And then what that same scene looks like. I've got another interesting connection to some of this too. The tunnel keeper in the by the 1910s and 20s was a guy by the name of Mr. Snyder, and the original tunnel keeper's house would have been near the tunnel, but after that, he lived in a former Baptist church over in Delaware. Got a nice telltale on this one. And my great grandmother came from a sort of broken family. Her name was Gladys Evans, and she went to live with Mr. Snyder as a boarder. And so here you can see the tunnel with the centrally located station again. So she went to live there as a boarder. So she lived. My great grandmother lived with the tunnel keeper of the Manunka Chunk Tunnel for years. And there's another one from the 1913 washout. Move on just a little bit. This is getting closer to where the tower was. This is just kind of a silly thing we do. We'd always run up the hill here on the first hike here, and there was a shrub at the top, little mountain laurel bush that we called the shrub of might. So we would make everybody climb up the hill. It was 1997 and more recently.
Is that Lurch?
That was Lurch, yeah. Here we're looking at, this is getting closer to Ramsayburg. So the Ramsay Homestead is part of Knowlton Historical Society. It's on the opposite side of the road from right here. But the Ramsayburg house was originally right here, built in the 1700s along this Manunka-Chunk Turnpike, which was the original 46. It was moved from its original location when the Warren Railroad came in to across the street. And there was originally a stone arch right here. But this picture here, which is from Lowenthal and Greenberg's book, shows the demolition of that arch under Truesdale, and it was replaced by a girder structure that was wider, of course. And this is a little bit of some of the changes along the right of way. Going back, they put a cell tower above the right of way up in this area. And to kind of show the passage of time between all of my hikes here, you could look at the size of the trees that are up there. Back on hike number 1 in 97, that's what it looked like. So it's kind of neat. It's all after abandonment stuff, but it's still just amazing to see the passage of time and how nature comes in to claim everything that was taken from it. I look at all these railroad rights of way like scars on the surface of the earth, and part of the interest of all of it is just to observe that healing process of it all. So this is the Ramsay homestead in Ramsayburg. It was restored using both state grants as well as grants from the Warren County Municipal and Charitable Conservancy Trust to bring it back to what you see here. They've done a fantastic job with it, and that is what it used to look like prior to that restoration. So another really nice thing here, and also had ties back to the railroad, and the Delawana house was nearby. This is another one here. I was trying to figure out for quite a while. In the little village of Delaware, New Jersey, there's a little stream underpass here, and William Barry had some photos in the area. I was able to figure out exactly where they were taken after some effort. And it's interesting. I don't know why they took some of the photos and the directions they took them. This might have been a ferry landing at one time, but you can kind of see that he would have had his camera on the tripod and just spin it around. And so I'm able to figure out a little easier where some of these photos were taken over 100 years ago. So that's a whole lot of fun. And the fact that the glass plate negatives are just so high quality, it's really cool to have this sort of mirror to the past. He might have taken these ones not because of an accident, but because that maybe he was photographing some of the structures at a distance that had been recently replaced with concrete. We can speculate about it all day, but now here we are in Delaware. This has got some interesting background for me. As I mentioned, Mr. Evans was the tunnel keeper. He lived right here beyond this bridge shown here. There was a three-story brick building that had previously been a Baptist church. So you can kind of tell by the window from it. There must have been something with the Baptist congregations. I believe they had some of the local ones had some ties to slavery or something, and they fell out of favor in this area. We saw a lot of Baptist churches closing around the same time and then repurposed as other things. And this one became a home. Directly across the street, the driveway to the right was the location of Michael Klein Allen's sawmill. MC Allen was my great grandfather, and this would have been a little bit. I guess Mr. Evans might have been here at this point. MC Allen's son, my great grandfather Edwin Allen, was also a lumberjack. They had a portable sawmill they traveled around the area with, and where they made a lot of their money was for selling railroad ties and mine props that made its way back up into coal country. So it was a very lucrative business, and some of my ancestors were doing very well with it. But this photo might have been taken at the time that my great grandmother was living in the house. My great grandfather, since she came from a broken home, was forbidden to see her. So they ran off to Elkton, Maryland, and eloped, and then moved to Hampton. So I've got ties to all these different places along the way, and all the stories have been passed to me from my grandfather. I tried to get him to come tonight, but he wouldn't. He's 93. He's still doing good though. So anyway, that's a little bit on that. I believe the reason that Mr. Barry was probably taking these photos has something to do with the underpasses and the flow of the stream as well. As you can see from what's going on over here. You can tell by the fill dirt over here, it was probably used with culm, C-U-L-M. It was probably like culm refuse or ballast used from mines that was plentiful to use as a backfill on this. It looked like it had rather recently been constructed here. The brick house was last lived in by a guy by the name of Hartzell, and after he passed away, the building was demolished. It was one of the floors was collapsing into the other one. I did get to go in and have a look around before it was collapsed, but nothing left of that today. Now we're downtown Delaware. Delaware is an interesting little town. The station was at the very end of this little main street. The brick building to the right is the oldest post office in the state of New Jersey, still in its original dwelling. The building on the left was a hotel, but it was also the brothel. I actually met with the owner of that building, and he went over a lot of the history with me. Pretty interesting little town. I've got a lot of family from this area as well. And if we go to the next one, there's the station at the very end of the street. So sometimes I'll use some of these other historic photos to try to locate exactly where it was, and it helps me to lay out some of the other then and now compilations I have coming up. So this is the former site of the station. Now it's a gas station truck stop. And here we have a colorized postcard image of the same thing. The location of the station was a piece of property that needed to be purchased by John I. Blair. The little town of Delaware owes itself its existence to the railroad pretty much, but there were a few people here first. The site of the station was the property of Henry Albertson. He sold the property necessary to purchase the railroad right of way and the station site. John I. Blair purchased that from Henry Albertson from his deathbed in the 1850s. To the point we've even seen the bill of sale and stuff like that from it. It's very interesting. I came to find out just through talking to other local historians that Henry Albertson is my 5 times great grandfather. So I've only found that out in the past couple of years. So here, this railroad right of way I've been tracing my entire life that I keep finding more and more ties to. I now find out that my 5 times great grandfather owned the property. The Albertson family, Nicholas Albertson, they first came to this part of Warren County in 1734. They were originally from the Dutch section of Nassau, Long Island, and they established a ferry over the Delaware River just across from where this photo was taken, is close to the ferry lane. Albertson's ferry was used through the American Revolution, and it was even commandeered by George Washington in 1777, where my 6 times great grandfather's journal reads in very phonetic Dutch. Washington took my ferry. Washington spelled Washenten. So it's really interesting to see. Washington was in this area looking for the outlaw Moody during that time, and crossed the river and dined in Mount Bethel, PA, and came back. So Albertson owned all of this. Again, we're also looking at more. These are all Steamtown NHS archives, William Barry photos. This is the area here where the NYS&W Railroad had its junction. Originally, going back to 1876, it was a junction with the Blairstown Railroad. The Blairstown Railroad is a good one with the station there. The Blairstown Railroad opened up and connected with the old Lackawanna, Maine in 1877. Only went to Blairstown, and they operated a dinky. So this is part of the remaining cut of the NYS&W line. When Route 46 was developed at the grade that we know it today, it was cut down quite a bit. But the NYS&W line, this was actually a cut, but it was blasted away by the landowner on the other side just very recently. There's back at the beginning of my hikes, we'd be climbing on that shale stuff. This was included here because that's me back on hike number 1 in 1997. And here I am wearing a tuxedo. So my grandfather's a barbershop singer. The reason I'm wearing a black, white, and red tux is because he sang with the 100 and Harmonizers, and the night before hike number 1 in 1997, I attended one of his barbershop singing shows, and that's the exact tuxedo that my grandfather wore on it. So I said on my 20-year anniversary hike, I'm going to no, it was 25-year anniversary hike. I'm going to wear the exact same tuxedo that he wore that we had just attended. So this is in the NYS&W cut. It'd been blasted around a little bit, so I was able to find the exact spot though. Also in Delaware, New Jersey, there's a couple different churches. There's always different denominations. This is Clarence Street, which is where the Lackawanna crossed over on a deck girder bridge. It was removed for school bus underpasses in some of the later years. This again is along the right of way in Delaware, beside 46. Another Barry shot. And this is the bridge over the Delaware. There's a whole lot of history with this. This is not the original bridge, of course. The first bridge to cross over the Delaware at this location. And as I stated before, that wasn't the preferred crossing. John I. Blair originally intended for the Warren Railroad to go further up, and then Morris and Essex bought land on the New Jersey side, had to resurvey. So this one is the bridge that remains there today. And we were crossing that back in 97. So the first bridge here was a wooden one built in 1856, and it lasted until 1877. That bridge was replaced by an interesting oblong single track through truss bridge that crossed over on right next to or on the exact same location. That one lasted from 1877 until 1890. In 1890, they built one that looks very similar to the one that's there today, only it had a central truss in it that separated the two tracks. So here's a photo I took in 1996 of the demolition of the bridge over Route 46, that the two bridges really that carried these lines. There were two side-by-side ones. That's because there were two right-of-ways. The near one was the one that was used from 1890 until about 1907. At that time, the railroad sold the 1890 bridge to a preacher by the name of Darlington. So he turned it into a highway bridge, and it was sometimes called the Preacher's Bridge, or it was called Darlington's Bridge. And he used it as a toll bridge until the predecessor to the Delaware River Joint Toll Bridge Commission purchased it in 1955, and then they demolished that bridge. the abutments to that bridge are still there today. And once again, this is what that scene looks like now. And here is before they removed that bridge. I got this picture also in 1996. I was 16 years old, and thankfully I wanted these pictures of these things before they were gone. And then it takes us over to Portland, PA, and the Portland station. So anyway, the bridge over the Delaware, the 1907 one is the one that remains today, and the other one's been gone. This is an interesting spot as well. I think I'm missing one here. This is Portland. In the background, you can see the Lehigh and New England Railroad crossed over at that point. This is not the original railroad right of way. The Lackawanna used to go further to the left here. Present day Route 611 is built on the original double track right of way. You'll notice the right of way now is only a single track. Looks like it only ever was. But that's not how it was. It was on 611, and the road that goes up the hill in this image is original Route 611. After the completion of the Lackawanna cutoff, the New Jersey cutoff specifically in 1911, this kind of became more secondary, and they were able to cut it down to single track through this area. And now you can see the station here. You'll notice that the station is just oddly not oriented with the tracks. That's because the tracks used to come straight out towards where I am. And this would have been, I guess, after it was moved also. But you have the trolley going through there. And there we go. That's a better one showing how it was originally aligned right out to 611. The good news is I met with the owners of the Delaware the Portland station. They brought us inside, and we got to see all of the woodworking. The owners of the station are doing a fantastic job to restore this building, and they're doing the best they can to try to get it all right. I've tried to provide them as many historic photos as I could of the station as it looked, and they are emulating with extreme detail as much as they can all of the inside furnishings, and it's absolutely amazing. They're going to be renting it out as restaurant space, so it's hoped that they're going to do really well, and it'll be just another nice establishment people can go to visit. The food mart there has since closed, but now there is an outfitter in there. Once again, you get some Barry photos here, but you can see how it used to be aligned. Some more of Portland. Now we're looking over towards the covered bridge. This is the entrance to the covered bridge and the cross arms over the tracks there. It was the last covered bridge to span the Delaware River, and it was washed out in 1955. And this location is where I started my first group hike back in 1997. Got my mom to drop. I didn't have a driver's license yet, so I got my mom to drop us off at in Columbia. We walked across the footbridge and started doing the hike. Here you can really see how much of a different alignment is. You get that slight curvature to the tracks back there that had not been in place back then. And here you have an original scene. You can see how the station used to be a pagoda style. The restoration that they're working on at the Portland station is the circa 1900 1910, not the original pagoda style. It would be too much of an undertaking. Plus, you'd be destroying some history to do it that way. I think there's might be a couple more in here, but we're just about to the end of what I had on this. This is my 25-year anniversary hike to the original one, walking through Portland, VA. And that's my original group on the first one back in 97. So my friends would say to me at the end of this, they said, because I had it in lieu of having a birthday party, I got my closest friends together and said, we're going to walk 20 miles from out in Columbia. We're going to come all the way back to Washington, to my house, which was just down the Morris and Essex line. So we did. We hiked 20 miles on the first one, and everybody. The idea was, the premise of it was like, this isn't going to be just a hike. It's like a roving party. We're out having a good time, and I was giving little history lectures on my 17th birthday, the same as I do today, and they absolutely loved it. And it was so great that it became a tradition based on this. So, and we kind of follow through with that. And going up a little bit further through the water gap, I wanted to just throw this one in too, because one of my favorite postcards, I've always had a big postcard collection, but one of my favorite postcards I had when I was little was one taken from this location. And I was trying really hard to figure out exactly where it was taken. And that's it. And it's really not at all the way it used to look, but still pretty cool to figure out exactly where it was. I figure that was probably an excursion out of Steamtown that was on this postcard. And I think I had one just for the beginning of the Portland Columbia Bridge there too, because that's pretty much where we start. That toll house on the Portland side seen here. The toll house still stands, but it was lifted off its foundation and turned 180 degrees to the left. And it's got 3 swan heads sticking out the end of it, but that toll house still exists. But that's where it all started. And it was a tradition, even with my grandfather. We'd be hiking at the water gap, and on the way home, we'd stop at this footbridge. And we'd walk across and buy a chocolate milk at the Port Mart. And now to this day, I take my 4-year-old across it. I walked across this bridge last night. So it continues. And that's about all I have there. So, if anybody has any questions about anything, if you're interested in joining the hikes, if you just want to, if you just want to talk, I'm cool with all of that. But feel free to follow on Facebook, and the posts continue every day, and we're learning more stuff all the time. I appreciate anybody that can add to this. I am not the authority on this. There's a lot of people that know way more than me, and I am very happy to learn from everybody else that can add more to what I already know. And it's great being a part of a community that loves this history.
And the Facebook page is called just Metro Trails, right?
There's a link.
Yeah, it's facebook.com/Metro Trails.
Yeah, there's a link in the bio. There's a link to the website and a link to the Facebook page in the bio.
I'm not very techy, so metrotrails.org has not been updated in a million years, but it has links to the stuff that does get updated. We also have a meetup page, meetup.com/Metro Trails also for the events. We do 15 to 20 mile hikes every weekend, usually Sundays, and that has continued now. It will be 29 years we've been doing them in March.
That's incredible presentation. I used to work out in Hampton, and I used to go to Washington a lot, friends out there, and so just tracing Warren River and where it went. So
That one's going.
It's a very interesting railroad.
It really is. That one's like going down a rabbit hole, and there's so many little nuances of it we've found everywhere.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't an easy railroad to build either.
Not at all. Well, it's amazing in that, like, the Manunka Chunk Tunnel almost seems like pointless. Why didn't they just go around the mountain? The grading was.
They did that anyway.
Yeah, well, they did it with the Beldell,
Yeah.
basically. But why didn't they go around? It's because a tunnel, as it's, I believe Lowenthal and Greenberg's book says, a tunnel was a sign of desperation. But at the time, I can't see it being that desperate to go through at Manunka Chunk. It almost seems like it was an effort to show strong arm tactics, to show that we can do this, and that it's less common. But we do have examples of that in early railroading and even early canaling, with one of the oldest transportation tunnels in America. The Auburn Tunnel on the Schuylkill navigation was completely unnecessary, but some say it was done specifically to generate interest and to show the technological finesse they had.
Yeah. John Blair was tenacious, to say the least.
Oh yeah, John Blair, and there's the old story with the race to the water gap that both he and the representative of Morrison Essex ended up on the same train to Trenton, but where the Morrison Essex representative dilly-dallied to make himself look presentable, John I. Blair ran into the office ahead of him. We don't know if this is a tall tale or if it's true or not, but it does, as Lowenthal and Greenberg describe, uh, illustrate his what a go-getter he was.
Yeah.
So they rebuilt that Portland Bridge at some point?
It's a pedestrian bridge now. The Portland.
Oh, I get that. I know which bridge it is, but like, was it washed out and rebuilt, or they just took the roof off, basically?
No, it was completely rebuilt. The bridge is gone, and raised.
There's a question from Keith Putman. Oxford Tunnel is known as Van Nest Gap Tunnel, correct?
Yes, it was a Van Nest Gap Tunnel, and the Van Nest family is throughout the area. Another Dutch name. There's actually state-owned farm Van Nest Hof and Ada Farmstead was originally the Van Nest family built some of that in 1755. So they were around Warren County very early on, the Van Nests. Now, at the time, too, the Oxford was actually called Oxford Furnace. It was more appropriate to refer to it as the Gap because Oxford Furnace was Oxford Furnace, but Old Oxford was what we now call Hazen on the corner of Route 519 and the road that goes over the mountain there. I'm thinking now it's Brass Castle Road or whatever. Now they call the church there is the Old Oxford Presbyterian Church, but that was Oxford, and actually the top of the hill was another settlement called Pittingerville, and then they came down into Oxford Furnace. Oxford Furnace grew because of the lucrative iron industry there. Oxford Furnace was only the third mined iron furnace in the United States. Not counting like bog iron and stuff, the first two being in Connecticut. Oxford Furnace opened in 1741, and that business only grew. So by the time the railroad came in, that just made it that much more lucrative business. So the Oxford name kind of got hijacked. But you see a lot of that kind of hijacking of names based on where it was. Washington was Mansfield, and then it became Washington from the bar. Hampton was actually Junction, then Hampton Junction. It took over as Hampton. Now people think it's more significant than New Hampton was. There's a whole lot of that.
Worth having one name is worth having three.
Yeah. Well, the step-by-step story of how it all happened makes it very interesting too.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like any more questions came in. So thank you, Mike. Really appreciate you doing this for us.
I'm happy to do it. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for asking. I love engaging with people, and especially when they're so into it.
Okay, cool. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and the next presentation will be the second Thursday of February with Tom Newman. So thank you and good night, everybody.
Well, now that I have Zoom.